Hey there, boys and girls. Welcome to this week's episode of Halloweekly. Nick and George here with our movies that are coming back into the conscious episode.
As Twin Peaks said, that gum you like is coming back into style.
That was way better than what I said. Made a lot more sense, too.
Well, yeah, but so what we're going to do is, like some movies that have legendarily sort of come back into favor in the horror world, like the prototypical example, I think, is probably Halloween 3 at this point, which was universally hated and then kind of came back into like critical acclaim.
It was weird because we caught the tail end of it coming back in. It was like, oh, that movie doesn't even have Michael Myers in it, to oh yeah, I watch this every Halloween, to okay, that's a fun movie.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, literally anytime in the last 5 years that I've ever seen a ranked list of the Halloween franchise movies, it's in the top 3 in every list I see. Not fans, I'm talking like websites like Collider, Screen Rant.
Yeah, they always give it a lot of props.
Totally.
So it's it's strangely came back around. So
right.
That's the phenomenon.
So we're trying to predict what other movies that are currently ignored or underappreciated will come to eventually be seen as horror classics.
Yes, and there was a few. So when we came up with the idea during our live in the Facebook group last week, but today before you recorded, I was sitting down. I was like, what are some horror movies that, because it's weird, sort of like when you're driving, I forget who said it, when you're driving, they're like, did you pass any signs on the way? And you're like, yeah. And they're like, well, what did they say? And you're like, well, how am I supposed to remember? You just see them going, these horror movies are those signs where I see people talking about them, and then it's strange, they're coming up more and more and more.
Yep.
And the ones that I've noticed,
so these aren't your picks.
These are my picks.
These are to illustrate the point.
Yeah. So Exorcist 3 has largely came back into now merchandise.
Yeah, I mean that Dorsey's got won Razzies for that when it came out, and now it's pretty regarded as
as a great movie.
At least the second best movie in the entire Exorcist universe.
Well, we did that one post where it was Exorcist 3 is kind of equal to, or maybe even a little bit better than the Exorcist.
No, not better, equal to, yeah. In its own way,
some
for
people
sure.
Are saying.
Well, I saw some people saying it was better. Lee said it was better, but the post itself, the idea was that pound for pound, Exorcist 3 is as good as Exorcist because it is a little more modern. So it stayed a little scarier in a couple of the parts, right? The serial killer angle really helps that one, right?
Yeah, especially with all that.
And the acting is such a showcase in Exorcist 3, especially Brad Dourif. So
it's all around pretty good.
Yeah.
It's all around pretty good.
Okay, so that's one. I agree. That's
Exorcist 3. One that I still think is in its infancy of coming back in would be the House of Wax remake.
Yeah, no one's ever going to regard that as a classic, but yeah, it is definitely getting more acclaim than it was.
But the fact that it's getting more acclaim than it was a few years ago, I'm thinking maybe 5-6 years we go down the road. It hits its 20th anniversary.
Yeah, maybe.
When did that movie come out? 2006?
I mean, I would go see a 20th anniversary screening of that in a heartbeat. It would be so fun.
That's what I'm saying. Yeah. Maybe. Okay, so I'm guessing House of Wax on the 20th anniversary, people are finally gonna reveal, pull back the curtain and be like, you know what? My feelings. I love that movie.
It was better, yeah, for sure.
Better than what.
And to your point, forget my classics whether it's going to be a classic or not. I love your metaphor of the signposts. There are definitely signposts everywhere because I'm seeing more and more posts about it, more people talking about it.
I can't, for some reason, I think I've seen that poster 6 times in the last couple months, which is way more than.
And sometimes it's generated by an event, like a release from Scream Factory or something like that. But or Fright Rags does art for or something,
or
and then
a bloody
remembers it exists. Yeah.
Do you remember this movie?
Or Joe Bob Riggs features Prom Night 2, and then everyone realizes that movie's great.
I can't wait to see what they do the next season.
I know.
I really like that show. Okay, so House of Wax.
Yes.
Okay, let me get your opinions on this one. This one, I'm not sure if it is or not. I've seen some posts about it, but when it comes to the movie, some people have opinions. Slither.
See, I don't think that counts because I think Slither is exactly where it always was. I don't think it's changed. I think there's a niche audience that really appreciates it. I think there's other audience who likes scenes from it, but I don't know that it was ever like crapped on or ignored. Like it's just a really niche movie.
Okay,
right?
that's where because my heart wasn't like feeling that it was, but it
because there's a whole
something.
genre of movies like that, like Society, or like those weird movies where the built-in audience for it is really a small percentage of the audience to begin with.
Right. You know what's weird? I would also kind of clump in with Slither, where I don't think it's part of this conversation, but it has that weird niche, would be the remake of The Crazies.
Yeah, totally.
Like
remakes are an interesting one because
it is a fascinating one here. Okay, so we'll ex-nay Slither. Friday the 13th remake.
Yes, for sure.
That's out of all of them, it's probably the one that I was most surprised with because I myself didn't like it when I first saw it.
Yep.
But now I'm looking at it a little bit differently. I'm seeing people posting about it, and
well, two things I think happened with that, at least that pop into my head right away. One is exactly what you're saying, and the second one is there was so much shit that came after it, like the Nightmare on Elm Street remake and the Poltergeist remake, where people looked back at the 2009 Friday and they were like, "Yeah, that looks like Picasso next to like the crayon drawings that are dropping around it." So
yeah, it was like the Subway of fast food, like. Totally. Like if I'm starving, I got like some shit over here, shit over there.
Right.
Friday the 13th was Subway. Well, you know what? At least I get to see him make it.
Right. Well, yeah. Subway feels like a bad choice until you pick White Castle, and then you're like,
yeah. Then you got the greasy runs. All right. So Friday the 13th. And
that's definitely got to come.
And it also made me really appreciate the cat who played Jason. The bald dude who was Swamp Thing, and then also in Twin Peaks: The Return.
Derek Mears, yeah.
Yeah, I really like that guy. I think I started following him.
He's a great guy in person, and then he's a great actor too.
And when people repost scenes from it, it's really refreshing because a lot of it. I know there's been a lot of Jasons, and Kane Hodder's probably the most prominent out of all of them. But the fact that the Derek guy, he just added something a little bit different that actually makes me kind of want to go back and rewatch it.
Yeah, and it's weird because it's the same thing as the Nightmare on Elm Street remake, which I'm here to tell you I rewatched recently and still is hot garbage. But Jackie Earle Haley did a really good job, like that, and so did Rooney Mara. That was Rooney Mara. Like it. But the movie doesn't hold up, and this one got lucky where the performance at the heart of it was good. And the movie's not terrible, right? But here's what I think is really interesting about that one. I feel like part of what drove that one's comeback is that Jason got I'm gonna say this in a weird way. Jason got a little less holy. So like when it came out in 2009, everyone expected Friday the 13th to be like the horror version of Star Wars, be an empire that just kept coming and rebooting and spawning and like whatever. And then it all stalled out after that. Right. So like Jason Voorhees. The shock of him not being supernatural, the shock of him using like tunnels that felt like such a cheat then doesn't bother anyone that much anymore, right? So like the main objection to the movie is
that was my biggest thing was, oh, he's got these tunnels.
Right. Well, that was everyone's when it came out, but like I think because Jason has become less like almost present in culture, it's a little bit easier to fuck with him.
Yeah, plus like he's got a lot of time.
He's got nothing but time.
He can go full Viet Cong and take some time.
He could go watch Exorcist 3 like 100 times in a row. He's got nothing.
He's cool. So then the last one that I had that I never understood why it had to have this like second rebirth of acknowledgement because I thought it was good even when it came out, and it's also like probably the newest. No, not the newest. Not on my picks at least. Was Scream 4.
Yeah.
What do you feel about that one? Because
I don't remember the reception of that one. I do remember disagreeing with most of what I was hearing, but it's very vague to me.
I just feel like the whole Scream franchise is always in this weird like bubble, like it's because like it's got those TV shows, people want to redo it, and like I always feel like there's a Scream article being released every week about the franchise.
Well, that someone posted that Scream 4 was better than 3 or 2 on Twitter. It was like a pretty popular name, like a Bloody Disgusting or Fango or something, and it caused like days of outrage. So I feel you because there were a lot of people hating on.
I rank it 1, 4, 2, 3.
Yeah, I mean, I go back and forth between 124 and 142, but I mean, it's close enough where I don't think it really matters. Only 3 is the weak link there.
That is true.
It's the same shape as the Final Destination franchise. Every film is great, but one.
Yeah, and we know which one we're looking at here.
Right?
NASCAR. Okay, so those are some of the films.
Cool.
So hopefully the listeners have an idea of what they're seeing on social media, sort of what we're picking up. Films.
And I guarantee you there are movies popping into their head right now while they're listening to this where they're like, I hope they say this, or this is the one that popped into my mind, or like whatever, because it's an interesting subject.
All right, so let's give them our first picks.
Sure. First, go ahead. You do your first.
Okay, so one that I want to see get a little bit more love is... I'm doing my toss-up answer right now. That really sucks. Okay, you know what? I'm going to put this one as honorable mention. That's tough. That's really tough. And I rewatched the trailer of it today, and it solidified my answer with this one. Is Fido.
Oh, shit.
Man.
Good choice.
Isn't that a good choice?
I don't remember its reception at all. What is it on Rotten Tomatoes? Do you know?
I don't
I'll
know.
look it up while you're talking. But
don't
go ahead.
care. I remember.
Let's say why.
Well, first off, like, you know, we always talk about like how like when we see movies like that matters. This was back like when Netflix had like an awesome streaming selection. You remember like when Netflix like was still kind of new.
Yep.
It was just like awesomeness all the time. Like
Crazy
they had like
to think of
Dexter,
that,
like Masters of Horror, and all this other shit. Fido was one of the films they had on there, and I remember it really sticking out to me as like, it kind of rewatching the trailer. It gave me Jojo Rabbit vibes.
Oh, interesting.
Because of
so
like
it's
the bright
2007 at 73%. Okay.
So yeah, good reception too. And I've seen it maybe posted like, I mean, how many years have we been doing Halloweekly now? Like we've had the group. I've probably seen it posted about like, let's say we've done it like 3 years. We've been doing this 3 years ish.
3.5.
3.5 years.
Yeah.
I've honest to God, if I had to like give a good faith estimate of how many times I've seen it posted in the group, I've probably seen it 5 or 6 times.
I've seen it twice that I can remember.
It's very low.
Once a year is what I'm seeing, and so you're right. It's
yeah. So
pretty ignored.
It's pretty ignored, and it's one of the like if you like. I really think if you like the Thor Ragnarok style, Jojo Rabbit, like that
which
style,
you know I love.
Yeah, like of craziness and fun, and it just looks good. Like it's that 1950s. Like the colors are poppy, the acting. Oh my God, let me bring up the cast, dude. Okay, can we talk about this cast? Hold on, Fido.
I love when you fight for these.
Dude, like, you know what's you know how this film needs to come back into the conscious because it left mine before we did this episode. I rewatched the trailer and it knocked my socks off of who's all in this movie.
And I love that you've got a reason for it, and the reason is that the whole Jojo Rabbit, Thor Ragnarok, that tone is coming back into style, which is going to drag other movies from the past that are that style with it, right?
Yes. Okay, so we're looking at... Why are none of the photos loading here? Oh, that's such a pain in the ass. Okay. So you get Tim Blake Nelson, Buster Scruggs himself, who has a sex zombie next door. God, where's the main... Carrie-Ann Moss is the mother. So you got Trinity in there.
Yes.
And then Dylan Baker, that cat from Trick or Treat.
Yes.
He's in it as the dad.
Billy Connolly's in it too, and I love him.
Oh, he's Fido? I'm finding this out right now.
Yeah, you should. You should support stand-up comics that have become.
Damn. No, so
horror actors.
But I love the idea of like. In fact, you know what's funny? Comparing it to Jojo Rabbit makes it like. Because like you have the little boy, and then you have Hitler, you have the little boy, and then you have this zombie, and the shit just starts to go wild. I think it's like one of the coolest looking. It's the best looking movie on my list aesthetically.
Interesting.
It's the cool. I think it's the best looking one. Like
best atmosphere, best colors.
Yeah, like it just feels
texture.
like you're watching like Happy Days, like but with zombies in it. And it's one of those films where I honestly got like recording this live. I think I've probably only watched it twice, but it's the one film that immediately pops into my mind, and I think that is a staple.
Yeah, for sure. Whatever your instinct tells you.
Something to come back.
Why do you think that it disappeared from horror consciousness? Why didn't it catch on?
Well, I was rewatching the trailer today. I think the production company or the release probably wasn't very big.
Okay.
It doesn't look
so
like
small release, bad marketing.
Yeah, and they just got. They could just repackage the film. Act like 2006 never happened. They could just repackage. Like, hey, we got this movie called Fido. Would you guys go check it out? It's in theaters March 2020.
Right.
And I think it would still. I think it would actually play like amazeballs.
Yeah, that'll be fun. We can do a double bill with the 20th anniversary of whatever.
The Matrix. We'll do the Matrix. Matrix. No, but like. The 1950s aesthetic itself is cool. Like that's why I think like those Fallout games are like really cool. Like there's something like really creepy about like the nuclear family and like and how tidy and neat everything.
Well, that's why like usually newsreel footage and that kind of stuff is a fail for me in a horror movie. I don't like those montages or whatever. Mm-hmm. But The Hills Have Eyes, kind of that feel is always solid, like the 50s nuclear.
Yeah. And I remember like they had their like zombie training in the beginning of theirs, and honestly, it's just a cool aesthetic with a great cast. It's really funny. And I remember it actually being very touching.
It is pretty touching. Is that the only zombie movie you considered?
Yeah, that's the only zombie movie I even considered.
I didn't come up with any zombie movies, and I was wondering why, but I was ruling out for various reasons. Like, I don't think Pontypool needs to come back because everyone...
A lot of posts about that.
Right, yeah, a lot of posts about that one, you know, and no, you don't need to get anyone to fight for that movie, really. It's just, it didn't get a wide release, but it doesn't need to be fought for. So I had to reject things like that, you know what I mean? So, like...
It's just weird to me that you could have Buster Scruggs, Trinity, dude from Trick or Treat, and then Bill Connolly, or whatever his name is.
And no one knows.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah.
Twice a year you're seeing.
That's weird. All right, well, it'll change now. We're changing this. Go
honestly
rewatch Fido.
I could just walk away from this episode right now with Fido and feel...
Be happy
happy as a little Lord.
All right, that's fair. Cool. Anything else for Fido, or you want me to do a pick?
I mean, honestly, it's as simple as just go watch it. Like,
go watch it.
It's so...
It sells itself.
It sells itself. I would bet 98% of the listeners who go and watch that show are going to love it.
Okay. Fair
and
enough.
Then 2% are going to message me, I didn't like it. And I'm like, you know
no, I think that's fair. I don't think anything in 2020 America is 98%, 2%, anything. We can't even...
Not even the band was 98 degrees.
But I think the vast majority of people, horror fans, at least the ones we care about who watch it, will love it. So, all right, That's fair. I am picking Pyewacket. Now, I put a pretty high standard on this. I was like, what movie could people go back 10 years from now and just say is a classic they missed, right? And I think Pyewacket is it. So for anyone who doesn't know what Pyewacket is, it's a really small character study that also has an occult, like, demon getting out of control element to it, right? So it feels a lot like Hereditary. It felt like Hereditary, but it's not. But it felt like it, right? So it had that feel. Here's the reason I'm picking it. First of all, it's legitimately scary and unsettling, which I needed, right? Second, it came and went pretty fast, and I don't know that I've ever seen anyone post about it online after like the 30-day window of it, you know, being released went away. But the main thing is that if witchcraft is true, this is how it works, right? So this movie, picture someone watching The Craft and then trying to duplicate what happened in The Craft, but in real life, and getting a real life negative force instead of kind of the glamour of what happened in The Craft. And that's what this movie is.
Gotcha.
Right? So this movie is literally the grittiest possible version of The Craft. Right. So and there's a couple reasons I'm picking it as a classic, because I think The Craft came around to be regarded as like really ahead of its time and pretty much a horror classic at this point. Definitely iconic. Right. Mm-hmm. And there's something about this movie. So first of all, it was way ahead of its time I mean, it should have been decades ago, but it was ahead of its time in terms of anyone that's important to the cast is basically female. So it kind of did that thing first, where it's just a basically all female character study of film, right? So it was giving us a point of view that you don't see in a lot of horror movies, right? And then it basically when this girl, she gets into a huge fight with her mom. Her life is shit. Her mom is moving her from place to place where she's disconnecting her from her friends. She's in high school. And her mom says something really over the line and atrocious, but only because she's under a lot of stress. She never should have said it, but she says something that's over the line. And when she says it to her daughter thinks to herself, I am going to get a book of spells and bring a demon down on you. I'm going to put an end to you. So she does it.
That's horrifying.
She does it. She does a real witch ritual with real blood, real spit, real mud, real bark, real like things, right? Like you can feel it when you're watching the scene. You know how much what she's holding, what it weighs. She's got to cut herself, and it's not like in a movie like The Craft or those movies. And every time the scene is like, well, we need blood for the ritual, and they draw like that line across their hand, and it's a perfectly straight line, and that little bit of blood comes out, and it's like she does it, and it's like a mess, and it looks like she's gonna have to go to the hospital, and like how it would really look, right?
Right.
So she summons Pyewacket, and nothing happens. So it turns out that Pyewacket is like a monkey's paw situation. Pyewacket is going to give you what you want, but in the worst possible version of what you want, right? So Pyewacket, if you believe Pyewacket, because this movie could go either way, but what happens is Pyewacket it basically decides, you want your mother dead, I'm going to kill your mother. But before I do that, I'm going to pause and I'm going to manipulate things so that you are completely in love with your mother and she's in love with you again. So everything gets manipulated where the daughter totally understands the pressures the mom's under, realizes that and she tries to take the spell back, but it's too late. And then Pyewacket convinces her that when she thinks she's striking back against Pyewacket, she's actually killing her mother. So she's the one who does it at the worst possible moment when she tried to undo it, right? So it's literally like the Fantasia, set the brooms loose, except for it's the worst possible version of that, like whatever. It's how real it feels. It's how convincing the acting is. It's how incredibly, insanely cool the third act is. And it's how sinister it is all across the board. So like, on a scale of like Exorcist themed, paranormal type movies, where The Exorcist is really right over at the top, very, very top of the chart. And then you go over here and you've got really good stuff like Blackcoat's Daughter. But Blackcoat's Daughter, which I love, has huge boring stretches in it, right? Mm-hmm. This movie does not. It's lean, it's mean, there's not many people in it. It's sort of a slow burn in the middle, but it's tense, it's emotional, and then when all hell breaks loose, all hell breaks loose. It's so good. So I just think that because of the female, forward focus, which I think there should have happened, a long time ago, but because it really kind of focused in on that and really, really got what the occult would really look like if you're trying to dabble into it now in real life. I feel like that's a movie where people are going to go back and they're going to be like, whatever. So it's a slow burn movie, but I watched it once when it came out, and then I watched it again, like a month after, and I've seen it 4 times now since. And it's not that I'm finding anything new in it. It's not whatever. It's just so fucking entertaining. Right. So Pyewacket, I'll pick it.
I've heard a lot of, or not a lot of Pyewacket because it needs to come back into the conscious. But when it does, it's usually because you bring it up.
Yes.
A lot of people are like, Nick, you gotta watch this movie. And I feel like the only way, because like from what you just described and from what you've said in the past, I really feel like the only way you can watch Pyewacket is by like randomly finding it in the middle of the forest underneath some leaves, and you're like, what's this? And it's an unmarked DVD.
Right, totally.
And then you put it in your player, and Pyewacket starts playing.
Yeah,
that's the vibe I get.
For sure, because it really does have that IFC midnight feel. It feels like something you'd have to come across at
which
like
could be either really good or really bad, depending on.
But you find some really cool, stuff in there. Now, there's a lot of movies like we're not doing runners up right now, but I considered Autopsy of Jane Doe. Because Autopsy of Jane Doe might arguably even be a better movie. It's definitely like more horror, right? And more showy and more, like whatever. But in the end of the day, I just felt like where things are trending for horror is they're trending in that really dig into dark emotions like trauma and grief,
A lot of trauma.
right, and those kind of things. And I feel like we're just going to head more into that direction, at least for the foreseeable future.
Yeah.
And if you do that, Autopsy of Jane Doe actually looks kind of light and gimmicky compared to something like this. It's still a great movie with great scares, don't get me wrong, but like this one really has emotional weight. So
How polar opposite are the feelings of our first two picks? Like Fido is like it's like a family of like the 50s, or like Leave It to Beaver, like and like a pretty happy ending if I recall correctly.
Yeah.
And Pie Wagon, no,
no,
sir,
no, horrible, tragic.
So
I love the variety, and I also like the fact that there are movies that are fun, like a Fido, like when you watch something like that that's entertaining, whatever. Pie Wagon is fun if you take it in the lesson learned. Never do that.
Right.
Never do anything that looks like that. Never like whatever. Then that it's one of those things where it's it kind of speaks to your reptilian brain of like you just learned how not to fuck up. Right. So
I wish I remember the actor who's like the main protagonist in Fido. He's this guy that if you saw, exactly the vibe he gives off.
Oh, I'm sure.
God, I wish I knew his name. But no, I think you finally sold me a Pie Wagon.
But see, here's the last thing I say is like when I picked one, I had one secret hidden thing underneath for each one, like where if I'm betting money on this horse coming in first, like coming through as a classic, Pie Wagon's got low chance of that, only because I don't think anyone's ever going to hear about it except for people who listen to this podcast going forward, because no one really talks about it anymore, and it's a pretty small movie, and it doesn't have a lot going for it to like whatever. But one thing it definitely has going for it that will be there waiting to be rediscovered is just the universality of the thing. Who hasn't heard someone they love, usually a parent, but it could be a sibling, it could be a loved one, it could be like whatever, say something that they felt like crossed the line, and in their head they were like, I should snap your neck. I wish I could just like drop a rock on you. I do whatever. And that thought itself is dangerous. And this movie shows that thought is dangerous. And sometimes you can't take it back. What does the Bible say? To sin in thought is to sin indeed, right? So like the fact that message, there is no one on planet Earth that hasn't gone through that. This movie has a message that would speak to anyone if they just watched it. So.
Shit. All right.
All right.
What?
Yes.
What do you think makes these movies come back? Because like it kind of feels random. Like,
you mean the ones that did come back, right?
Like the ones that did come back, like Halloween 3. Like I still don't even know how Halloween 3 came back in. Like because I remember seeing it before it really came back into like the public grace of horror fans.
Fog Machine's why it came back.
Yeah, that's right.
Tom
Atkins.
No.
That makes sense.
I actually did have I had a couple theories on this. So I feel like some things give you greater odds of the comeback situation. So one of them is that you live in a franchise, right? That's just automatically going to give you more visibility,
right?
No, anyone who buys like a box set or like a complete edition or like whatever is going to have that even if they don't want it, right? They're going to get that movie even if they don't want it. Like even if I like that's the thing. If I bought like the Phantasm series, like or even more, if I bought Hellraiser, I wouldn't want Hellraiser Great Value, whatever that one's called.
Oh yeah, right.
But I get it in the complete,
or Phantasm Ravager.
right. Well, Ravager's okay, but so I think there's odds that. Second thing is, I think sometimes when an idea gets way overplayed to death, any variation on it that happened before ends up looking way fresher. Right. So at Halloween 3 pissed everyone off that it didn't have Michael Myers in it. But by Halloween 24, we've seen so much Michael Myers.
A little something different.
Having not Michael Myers might feel pretty good, right?
Right.
So like I feel like that gives that like a greater chance of a comeback. Aside from the fact there's got to be something good in it. There's got to be something that catches your eye, and it can't be like it can't be a pile of shit.
I kind of feel like it's weird because like Halloween 3 has came back. Scream 4, I feel like out of all the rest of them is still somehow fighting for it. I get this weird feeling that Nightmare on Elm Street 2 and 3 are constantly fighting for who's that position.
Well, not 3. Everyone loves 3, but 2 is definitely a comeback candidate. Like I see that everywhere now.
Okay, so you think
that documentary is like whatever, but when we post about Nightmare on Elm Street 2, there are certain go-to movies that I know that if we post about them, we're going to get crapped on, right? Like, I already know. Like, if we post about It Follows, everyone's going to shit on us, right? Like, it's just automatic. If we post about The Babadook, I'm going to get 100 comments about how the kid's annoying, right?
Dude, whenever I see us post about one of those movies, like, I crack my knuckles. Like, hey, I'm going in.
And if you look at older ones, I mean, the only people who are fighting for something like a Jaws 3 are fighting for it because it's ridiculous and they just have fun making fun of it, right?
Trying to get you to watch it.
Right, but it's just dumb, but they love doing. So, like, you know, though there's those reasons for those things. I don't know, it's more about, you know, if we're talking about why a movie is coming back and we give an example of a good movie, people recognize that it's good, and then it just becomes a case of, are they trying to pick a flaw in it on purpose because they want to reject it, right? It's not horror, or, you know, whatever version of it's not scary, or, you know, like whatever bad CGI, you know, whatever. You'll find it in the movies you want to hate, and you'll ignore it in the movies you want to love.
That's a good point,
right? So
that's a good point.
That's what they're doing until something, you know, steers them differently. Now, Nightmare 2, when we post about it, it gets probably like 70-30 support at this point.
Right. That makes sense.
Because, let's be honest, the Freddy in Nightmare 2 is scarier than the Freddy in Nightmare 1.
Yeah.
Nightmare 1's way better, but the Freddy
got that different
is more terrifying
in
2, right? So it had that one thing you can anchor on and be like, I believe in that, and then you're good to go.
That's interesting. I feel like we're on to something. I really feel like our picks. I really feel like between Pontypool and not Pontypool.
Fido.
Fido. Pie-Wagon. Damn, see, there's all these weird title movies that are coming out now that I just, like, I don't even know, like, Keepski Tapes, like, I'm going to throw that one in there, too. That's the one I'm frightened to watch.
Yeah, and there's all kinds of, that's the thing is, we'll get to honorable mentions, but if you want to break down, here, I'll give you one honorable mention, I'll give you a taste, because it illustrates sort of the point, right?
Right.
I was this close, you can't see it, guys, but I have a thumb and finger really close together right now. This close.
Oh, that's close.
To picking Red Eye, the Wes Craven movie. And I love fighting for this movie. No one talks about it. No one, I mean, most horror people don't even think it's horror. They think it's like an action thriller, political thriller, you know, something like that. And it's got a lot of those elements, although the third act is basically a slasher film, because once they get off the plane into the house, he's popping out of closets and doing jump scares, and, you know, they're going at each other and whatever. But I almost went with it because it's so good. The acting is so fucking good. And Wes Craven, when he goes into slasher mode at the end, he's doing everything he knows how to do as a director to, like, it's like Wes Craven's Halloween, but not supernatural at the end of it, right? So, like, all of this is good. But for some reason, he put the goofiest, worst humor in this movie. And it's so terrible. There are these, I mean, literally, Red Eye is so good. It's so good. And I'm watching it. I'm like, this is one of my favorite Wes Craven movies. And then every 5 minutes, there's a wah, wah, wah moment. And I'm like, what is happening? Did he hire, like, who's a really bad, cheesy comic? Did he hire Dane Cook to write, like, the one-liners or something? Like, I don't know how that got into the movie. But I can't vouch for it because of that. But it has all the elements. It's Wes Craven did it. So, like, anyone who's going to go back and they're missing Wes Craven like we all do, they're going to want to see something they haven't seen before. They're going to notice that, watch it. They're like, oh, this is pretty good. So it has a chance to come back. It's got great actors. I mean, are you kidding me? And then, you know, Wes Craven actually said Red Eye was the kind of movie he wished he'd done more of.
Whoa.
Right? So it's got all the things just waiting to be discovered. And the only reason I couldn't pick it was I just don't like knock, knock, who's there, fuck you, whatever the jokes are in there, but they're terrible. So
I tried using Red Eye in a bit. But, like, because, like, there was this time I was on a Southwest flight, and I was sitting next to this former member of the SWAT team, Dallas SWAT team or something like that. He was this dude. He was really nice.
This
fucking
is amazing.
Jacked. And he was watching, it was like a Netflix original, Spectre, something like that. Like, where, like, they're like, there's these ghosts and like there's like an army thing.
Okay.
And like he was watching on his phone and he had both earbuds in and he kept nudging me going, hey, check out the special
Oh,
effects.
you told me about this guy, right?
Yeah, and he was like, check out the special effects. I was like, oh, that's cool. And he went, oh, dude, check out this scene. I was like, wow.
And you got your pen.
And then he just slowly kept leaning closer to me and like angling the phone towards my face. And I ended up watching a whole movie with no headphones because I
That's
felt
worse than Red Eye.
Yeah, he was like Cillian Murphy, but like a cinephile. He was like for like terrible movies. So I watched like 80% of this movie without headphones. Oh yeah, so that was the only other time Red Eye's been mentioned.
But like, there's that amazing scene where he has to take Rachel McAdams out because she wrote a message in the bathroom on the mirror, and he's like, they're gonna read that and then stop the plane, and I'm gonna have to kill all of you. And she's like, oh, like whatever. I forget what her action is, and she looks at him like, and while she's looking at him, he headbutts her and knocks her out, and it's like a cobra strike. It's in half a second. Because he has to do it. Everyone's on the plane. They could turn around and look, right? And it's just kind of those touches that make that so good. But anyway,
Cillian Murphy.
Yeah.
He's phenomenal. Okay, so that's...
Give us your second pick.
Second pick. I'm looking at that one that I kind of crossed off for honorable mentions going like, do you got a chance? Do you got a chance? No.
No.
You don't. You're going to be an honorable mention. Yeah, okay, so my second pick, we've talked about it a little bit. I'm going to go with The Ruins.
Oh, shit. I didn't even think of that, but I should have.
Almost all of these movies are films I haven't rewatched in a long time.
Okay.
But
fair.
they hit me real strongly. And so there's like...
I rewatched The Ruins, and it held up.
I remember, I think we did it in a watch party not that long ago, and I caught a little bit of it.
Super good.
But what's weird is, so I'm like sitting here looking at my list, and I'm like, how do I view these movies? Like when I'm sitting down and watching them, like how do I feel? Like when I watch Fido, I know there's gonna be a lot of comedy and great acting. There's gonna be a lot of heart to it, and it'll have some gore in there that'll be nice. With the zombies and stuff, and with the other films mentioned, you can sort of sit back and enjoy them and have their scares. Like in Exorcist 3, there's the big scare. House of Wax, there's a lot of cheap sort of jump scares that are fun. But The Ruins is the type of horror film, like when I'm watching it, I try, you almost, I guess you kind of do this all films, but you kind of try to play out like what would you do in your head when you're watching these movies.
Totally.
And like a lot of times, this is a zombie film. Why'd grab a gun and blast them on the head and get out there, save the day.
Right.
The Ruins is the only one where not the only one, but one of them where when I watch it, I try to play it in my head. I fail every time.
It's like, did you ever see the movie Flight, the Denzel Washington thing?
I've seen parts of it.
Because at the end, they're because he's a terrible character, but a great pilot. And at the end, the investigator goes, just when he thinks he's going to get busted because he was high and drunk while he's flying the plane or whatever, she's like, but we put 30 of our best pilots into simulators and duplicated the situation you were in. And they all died. Only you could have landed that plane.
Right.
Right. And no matter what you do in the ruins, you're all dying.
No matter what you do in the ruins. And for me, like, there's a lot of, like, especially to, like you were saying earlier with a lot of the horror films today, they're going towards, like, trauma and, like, really crazy emotions.
There was emotional friendship richness in that movie.
Yeah, and but there was that, and I think it did sort of, like... The best thing I think Midsommar did was it kind of stretched out like this like kind of shitty tension of like I don't want to be here, but I'm trapped and I don't know.
But I have to write my thesis.
Yeah, but I got to write my thesis.
You,
when we were watching Midsommar, I'm like I'm hiking through the woods for like 10 fucking months before I reach civilization. I'm getting the fuck out of there. Right. But I think something like The Ruins did it a little bit better, and it wasn't even the supernatural part of it. It was more of like the first part of the film when they're actually on like the little Aztec mountain or the temple or whatever it is, pyramid, and the natives come out around them, and they have
favorite scene. The first thing that popped in my head when you said that.
And they have like the bow and arrows, and like holy shit, this sense of dread that I remember them feeling like, and then
that was good acting in that scene.
It was great acting in that scene.
They seemed really terrified.
And I felt that way as an audience watching it because
not to interrupt, but I just want to say this before I forget. One of the things that I've always thought about The Ruins I think is super cool is that I think that movie is the best secret use of torture porn. Because I don't like the torture porn genre in general.
Right.
But this movie is torture porn, but not And that is so cool that they hit that perfect balance, right? Because if you make the ruins and you don't put torture porn in it, you have the Descent. And if you make the ruins and you make it all torture porn, you have Turistas, which you've probably never seen, but is a fucking terrible movie. So this movie is like the sweet spot, right? Like right.
It hits a lot of points like right in the bullseye, and so like that, like the sense of dread of like not being able to get down there, and just like your mind, like you kind of feel exhausted by the end of the ruins. But you just feel like you've been through so much shit, and then they throw in that sort of supernatural stuff with all the vines and stuff like that, and has really great uses of gore. It's honestly like I feel tired after watching it. Yeah. Like it's like a mental workout. Like people say The Shining is the one you lose the most calories with. Where's the Ruins at?
Ruins
on that
is
list?
Exhausting. It's true.
I
love it, and I think that one of the like in the category of what chance does it have to come back and get re-noticed or whatever. I feel like The Happening came around and made the Ruins look like Casablanca.
Yeah, like right? with the plant stuff. Right.
Because that was the problem with the Ruins when it came out. Everyone was like, "Killer plants? Are you fucking serious?" And then it just they didn't take it seriously. But first of all, it's based on a genuinely great horror novel. Like genuinely.
Really, I didn't know that.
Like The Ruins is one of the very few horror novels I've ever read that happened during the height of the Stephen King era when he was pumping out like. It was his second wind, I think, that era. It was like Misery, that kind of like, when is The Ruins? What year was The Ruins?
The Ruins was like 2000. The movie was 2007.
All right, that makes sense. But Stephen King had set the model for kind of like what sort of like that looks like, and then The Ruins came along and basically.
2008. Fucking nailed it.
You're right. I mean, I think the fact that it's genuinely terrifying and emotional, and the people who thought the villain part was stupid can now come back and realize that it was the decisions the character was making that got them killed, not the plans.
Yeah, and what's funny is you could almost double bill this. Actually, this is what I would do. I would do a double feature. I would do The Ruins, and then I would go right into The Descent. Yeah. Because I feel like both of those films, like I feel like you need to shower. Like you just got done going to the
That's
gym.
How I feel about Mimic, which I considered for my list, but wasn't good enough to get there.
But I feel like The Ruins. I mean, honestly, you could probably even just remake it again, take another stab at it. Same thing with Fido. Just maybe not even remake it, just re-release it.
Re-release it.
So yeah, that's my second.
That's a great pick. I hope that gets a lot more notice because it's not a perfect movie, but it deserves it because it was so much better than what I got. The impression of the reception of it was like right?
Correct, yeah.
And the book itself.
What's the book?
Like if you read
I did not know this.
The book's literally called The Ruins. I forget the guy's name, but it's really normal. It's like Steve Scott or Scott Smith or something like that. But it was when I read that, it was like reading The Ruins was like reading. I don't want to say Pet Sematary, but I'm going to. It was like reading Pet Sematary. It was like, wow, this is terrifying, and I don't know how they're going to film it if they turn it into a movie, but it's terrifying. And it had all that slick plot machinery that Stephen King does so well, and the characters, like, it's a great book. I think the book is actually better than the movie, but...
Really?
And I know everyone says that's usual, but that's actually not usual with the horror movies I watch.
All right.
But anyway, I love that pick. All right. I'm going to throw a curveball in because I'm saving... my the movie that the most people would have seen out of the three I picked for my last choice. So I'm going to throw a curveball and pick a documentary. I'm going to go with Lost Soul, which is the story of Richard Stanley attempting to make the Island of Dr. Moreau movie, right? And there's a really particular reason I'm picking this. So first of all, I'm convinced to this day that movie is in the top 5 horror documentaries ever made. Mm-hmm. Never seen anyone talk about it or post about it or whatever. It got raves when it came out, don't get me wrong, but like from Bloody Disgusting and Fangoria, they all were like whatever, and then vanished completely. Now, there's a couple things happening with this movie that are making me pick it. First of all, the most underserved cinema landscape for horror is H.P. Lovecraft, right? We've talked about this many times on the podcast. There's no great H.P. Lovecraft movie ever made, right? And in the genre,
Much as I want to say Dagon,
right? No, it's not
find me
Dagon,
on it.
and The Mist isn't really Lovecraft, so don't throw that at me. Like they're Lovecraftian, sure, but like actual Lovecraft. So Richard Stanley, who is a legitimate horror auteur, like he is a horror version of who's the I can't ever say the guy's name. The guy who did Drive and
Nicholas
Neon Demon,
Refn,
right?
yeah.
So he's the horror version of that, right? But
Gotcha.
he just released a movie called Color Out of Space, which is a adaptation of my favorite H.P. Lovecraft story, right? And he has such a unique vision. There's no one else like him, right? So first of all, he might get rediscovered just from the fact that he's active again because he hasn't done movies.
I've seen a photo of this guy floating around.
Yes.
Yeah, because of that new movie. Yeah,
Exactly. So I'm hoping that the documentary will get some rewatch just from the fact that he's sort of in the zeitgeist a little bit. But the documentary itself is amazing. But there's a very particular reason I'm picking this, and it's because as people who do a horror podcast and run a horror community and all those things, one of the things that I've noticed over the last 3 years that has really increased in frequency is people talking about horror in terms of like, how do I say this? It's more about why can't they win Oscars? Why can't they be taken seriously? Why can't whatever? And even when horror pushes into and Shape of Water and like Silence of the Lambs, whatever, but horror fans always get that spidey sense going on that the reason those movies are winning is they're not really horror, right? Now I don't agree with that, and I hate that argument, but it's still true that to infiltrate those top awards, it's got to be a little folk-tale-y like Shape of Water, or it's got to be like serial killer procedural like Silence of the Lambs, or it can't be horror. It can't be straight horror, right?
yeah, you got to bend it a little.
Right, exactly. So, when you watch this documentary and you see that this guy is a true horror guy, he is us. Anyone who loves and lives and breathes horror is this guy. And this guy tried to make his Shape of Water with Island of Dr. Moreau. And he got shut down by the establishment. He got undermined by the production company. He got screwed by Marlon Brando and Val Kilmer. Like, he was trying to make... The reason this movie failed and Shape of Water succeeded is because Guillermo del Toro is he's a better director, but he's savvier in terms of what he's sneaking into it. And like, he knows, how he needs to modulate it. And this guy doesn't have any of that. He's got no social skills. Like he's just trying to get his vision out there, right? So he's trying to make this movie, and it turned into a total disaster. And it's heartbreaking, but also amazing. And there are just incredible moments in this documentary. There's a key sequence in this movie where he set up for like a year, and his job was on the line. He was under enormous pressure. Budget was spiraling out of control. Marlon Brando was wearing an ice bucket on his head for some reason and not telling anyone why. Like, all these crazy things were happening. And he had to get the pivotal scene filmed. And right when he was doing it, a typhoon blows up and almost wipes out his whole set. Actually, it does wipe out a lot of his set and destroy a lot of things, whatever. And he's so desperate, he tries witchcraft. He tried to pie-whack in it. He tried to cast a spell to make the storm go away because he's partially nuts. But also, he was that desperate and that, like,
Imagine if pie-whacker came
motivated.
out dressed like Cecil B. DeMille, like
or like an Ed Wood when he meets Orson Welles. Like,
with the director pants and the hat.
And then also, there's amazing moments where he vanishes, the director vanishes, and no one can find him, and they're trying to film a scene, and he's in costume in the background as an extra, as a monster in his own movie. After he gets fired, he's lurking around, like, trying to be in the movie. Like, just, there's so much weird, unduplicatable shit in this documentary. It's just a really cool thing. But at the heart of it is there is a reason that horror, you can't bring horror to dinner to meet your parents, right? There's a reason. You can dress horror up. You can get it a nice suit. You can rent it a tux. You can teach it fork from knife. You can give it a napkin. You can do all the things. But when a horror comes to dinner, all hell's going to break loose at some point, right? And it doesn't break loose in Silence of the Lambs. I mean, it does on the screen, but Jonathan Demme kept such exquisite control of that movie. It just feels like a Hollywood movie, right? Mm-hmm. Like Richard Stanley was making a real horror movie and no one wanted it because they wanted Silence of the Lambs, but they hired a guy who was going to give them Mandy, right? So like, it was just an amazing documentary, but it really, I want it to be, there's a reason why some horror movies just never come back to be seen as classics, even though legitimately are classics, right? Like there are people who swear, that there are war movies like All Quiet on the Western Front or whatever that are the greatest war movies they've ever seen. But there are movies that are in the horror genre, like basically J'accuse is a horror war movie, that are just as good, but no one talks about it because it's too horror, right? Mm-hmm. And this documentary really shows why you can't bring horror to dinner and expect it to behave the whole time, and good for horror that it's that way.
Mm-hmm. You are selling me on all these choices.
Good.
Man, you're doing a great job here. A++ job. I hope at least one other person watches Fido.
Yeah, right? Well, we'll do watch parties with this.
Yeah, that was like a speak.
We should do watch party because you can do watch party and go live.
Oh, yeah, we wanted to test that.
Yeah. So if we can find Fido, we'll do it.
Yeah, I'll be down to do that.
All right, do you have something else before last pick?
Yeah, the one I threw under the bus.
Oh, you go for it.
Last second.
Okay. We're doing honorable mention.
Yeah, because I only got one more.
Let's do it.
All right. I'm going to give it to Unfriended.
As an honorable mention. I just thought... Signposts everywhere for that one. I see a lot of people talking about that movie.
I've seen it a little bit. I feel like that one's like sparking up again. Mm-hmm. Like I feel like there's something about it that's still
it merited a sequel, so that,
It's very true. I remember when it came out, a lot of people like didn't like the idea of like the Skype horror film, but like it totally worked for me and left me completely unsettled.
Poor Unfriended got buried at the tail end of everyone just deciding en masse that found footage horror was terrible, which was the dumbest development because there are great found footage horror movies.
Oh yeah, you know what? That's the other one that's actually found
like
a second life.
So Below.
That's probably the current one that people are coming back and loving. Yep. But you're right. Like it was paranormal. They were. I don't even think they had numbers at the end of them anymore. It was like paranormal.
Right. Paranormal Ghost Mission Protocol.
Yeah, like they were that far in the paranormal activity. People were like, I think we're good with paranormal. And then you had like Grave Encounters and
then everyone retroactively decided the original Blair Witch Project sucked, which I missed that because that's a great movie.
That was a weird time.
Right?
Yeah, I feel like that was like 3 days. Like it was like Memorial Day weekend, and people were like, "Fuck Blair Witch." We're like, "What?" And then like
there's
Tuesday,
still a lot of Blair Witch hate.
Tuesday, they were like, that's but you're right. Unfriended was at the tail end, and I thought like even though it was found footage, I thought it did something completely different than everything else, and it just took a huge fucking chance. And to me, like props for that, and the fact that it took a chance and it still left me feeling unsettled. And I actually really liked the like the lore behind it, like the girl who committed suicide.
That's the
and
best
like
part.
it was
and I can tell you for a fact that they did a really good job with the lore, because Friend Request is the same movie as Unfriended, and because the lore is different, it sucks.
See, I never even.
If you
saw
just
that
watch Friend Request, and you will realize that you're watching Unfriended with bad lore.
Damn. It was creepy. It was,
and it will hold
creepy.
up. It won't date for a while. I don't know what ultimately will happen when people see Skype in 50 years from now. But I went back and watched Unfriended recently, and it holds up. Like you would expect tech movies to date pretty fast.
Yeah, but even when they do start to date, like it's not hard to pick up on like what it is that piece of tech is doing.
Totally. But like, there comes a time where like when I went to see the anniversary, whatever it was, 20th, 30th, 100th, whatever it was, re-release in the theaters of the original Jurassic Park. And and the audience dissolved into laughter when the computer hacking sequence happened.
Right.
And it took them totally out of the movie. Like, there was you're supposed to be like on the edge of your seat, suspense.
Yeah, there's raptors like outside.
Right, but all anyone could was laugh at, the clicking and the mouse and the Unix system, whatever the fuck it was called.
Big
monitors, right? And shit. And because it dated pretty hard. But the spooky thing about Unfriended, that style thing is, there's an emptiness to social media. There's a hollowness at it, and that like blue flickering light, empty, like it's cold, it's chilly. It's like almost like a Kubrick, the way he shows the universe,
right?
And that's not gonna date.
And
that's spooky.
And like the fact that like they made it look like I think they shot them on GoPros or something like that. Like I don't know. I don't think they use like cinema cameras, but like they made it look like cheap webcams, like on everyone's footage, on everyone's camera. And there's something about like that texture and like that sort of like not looking perfect-ness of it that I think is gonna help it from aging as hard and as fast. So Unfriended.
Totally. Yeah, I agree. And it has the necessary quality of being actually scary.
Yeah, like even like
there's a couple kills in there that are
the poster of the movie is like our main actress crying into the camera because that's what you're in for.
Because that's what you're in for.
That's what you get.
Get off Skype. I love it. All right, so my last pick is Lost Highway from David Lynch, and this is a hard one for me because I hated Lost Highway when I first saw it, right? And I'm a big Lynch fan, but Lost Highway felt really minor. So there's a in his work, right? So there's a phenomenon with really, really top flight artists. Like this happens with, Beethoven, where everyone knows Beethoven's fifth, but no one can hum Beethoven's eighth, right? Like, because every artist has like what's considered minor works, the things that weren't that important or they didn't do that great a job on or like whatever. And I always thought of Lost Highway, and I think most people do, because no one talks about Lost Highway ever. Like, unless you're doing a career retrospective for David Lynch. I see people talk about Inland Empire before Lost Highway, which I don't think Inland Empire, which is his last full film, it is very good. But there's very specific reasons I'm picking this for this. So remember that, and I had so much fun with this. So I grew up watching like a lot of classics, and I love classic films or whatever. And so I grew up with Hitchcock, and I saw all the usual suspects. Right? I saw The Birds and Rear Window and Psycho and all the things that a horror fan would love, right? And then I saw his non-horror stuff, like North by Northwest and his thrillers or whatever. But pretty late in the game, I came to a movie called Shadow of a Doubt. And Shadow of a Doubt is in my top 10 American films of all time. I love this movie, right?
Right.
It's a serial killer thriller. It's a really quiet character study. It's like whatever. But it's sort of like this minor, not many people know this movie sitting in a director's work, right? Well, Lost Highway is that for David Lynch. 20 years from now, people are going to look back and they're going to realize that Lost Highway is the bridge between Twin Peaks, Mulholland Drive, and the rest of Twin Peaks. It's a puzzle piece that was missing because it's the same idea as Twin Peaks and Mulholland Drive. And the thing that's mind-boggling to me is that not many people like this movie. Even Lynch fans don't like this movie. And when I looked up, I just Googled real quickly before this, let's rank David Lynch movies ranked. And I found most lists had it in the bottom 3 of all his work, right? And the thing that's mind-blowing to me is that Lost Highway is a companion piece to Mulholland Drive, and Mulholland Drive is considered in a lot of lists to be the greatest movie of the last 20 years, right?
Wild.
So you've got the greatest movie of the last 20 years sitting right next to a movie with essentially the same plot idea, and no one cares about this movie over here, and this movie over here is like whatever, right? So like it's like Cinderella and her sisters, right? like Cinderella's getting shit on over here, and her sisters are having a great time, and like whatever. So Lost Highway. So that's one reason I'm picking it. Is that the second reason I'm picking it is it's one of those few movies where you've seen the scene. Even people who haven't seen the movie have seen the scene where Robert Blake, the scary pale-faced guy, is talking to Bill Pullman, and he's like, "I'm in your house right now," and it's the phone call scene, and it's really creepy. And if you haven't seen the scene, it's amazingly creepy. Yeah. But I remember where I was when I saw that. That scene impacted me so hard; it unsettled me so much. I literally remember the time of day, the place, the weather. I remember thinking about it afterwards, like, how is that possible? Like, whatever. It's like the Mulholland Drive diner scene. It's Lost Highway's version of the diner scene. It's a little horror story in miniature, right? It's a 4-minute horror story It's scarier than anything I've seen from horror in the last couple of years, right? Well, that's not true, but it's as scary as anything I've seen anyone do in the last couple of years.
Right.
So it's hereditary, like telephone pole scary, that scene, right? Mm-hmm. So it's got that kind of dynamic going on where it's legitimately terrifying. And the reason I'm picking it most of all is because it's got nothing. No one's going to fight for this movie. So let me explain. Inland Empire has Laura Dern. So if there's a Dernissance, someone might go back and discover,
right.
Inland Empire. There's no Bill Pullman fan club, right? He's a great actor, but like
don't get me started.
Right, but I know
sick. There should be.
Right, he's a great actor, but there's no one agitating for more Bill Pullman or like whatever, right? Not like a Laura Dern got at the Spirit Awards recently where they did like a 4-minute song homage to her. That's never going to happen for Bill Pullman, right? Patricia Arquette's an amazing actress, but like under the radar like the whole time, right? So this movie doesn't have the things that other movies would have that would bring it along. And the best performance in it, which is Robert Blake, is he's a murderer.
That was a killer performance.
Right? So no one's gonna fight for that. And I'm telling you, like, I've come to appreciate as I've gotten older more and more when a movie does something that's so memorable, that sticks in your head so hard that you can't escape it, that it will pop into your head no matter what. And like the sequence in Lost Highway when Robert Loggia is in the car and he runs the other car, a guy's tailgating him and he pulls over and beats the crap out of him, like whatever. That scene is so fun. That scene is David Lynch's Quentin Tarantino scene. That scene is David Lynch's Death Proof, like in miniature, right? So this movie's got amazing sequences. It's authentically terrifying, but no one's going to come back and revisit it on the strength of anything in it because it doesn't have an actor that people are going to go back and rediscover. It doesn't have, I don't know. The only chance this movie has to get rediscovered is because it has one of David Bowie's great all-time songs in it, the I'm Deranged song. Right, so maybe the David Bowie effect might come back and hit it. And the last thing I'll say is, when a movie can do something to you and scare the shit out of you, and you don't know why you're being scared, and then when you realize what you just watched, it's scarier after you realize what happened. Mm-hmm. That's what this movie does. So let me give you the example of this, right? At the end of this movie, big spoiler, if you haven't seen it, turn away for 90 seconds. At the end of the movie, Bill Pullman is driving pell-mell down the road being chased by police, right? The camera's showing you those yellow lines, the Lost Highway kind of like thing, and it keeps flashing back to his face. And then for no apparent reason, he starts freaking out in his car. His head starts going all Jacob's Ladder. It goes back and forth, way too fast for a human head to move. And smoke starts to appear, like around his ears. And then his face blurs and he looks like a demon. And then the music just cuts out and everything goes silent. And all you see is the yellow lines going into the distance. And and then the movie ends, right? So when I saw that, it was terrifying because it was...
That's chilling.
It's a terrifying... Wait for it. It's terrifying. The visual is terrifying. So it terrified me when I watched it, but I didn't understand what I was seeing. Let me tell you what you're seeing when you watch that. This guy is in prison. He has been convicted for killing his wife who was cheating on him.
Right.
He is in prison. He is not on that road. He is not on the highway. And the police are after him because the police are coming for him. And when he transforms at the end, what do you think is happening to him? He's being fried in the electric chair. He thinks he escaped because he's insane. He thinks he's getting away from the cops going down the highway, and he's getting fried in the electric chair, and that's why his head does that. And when you realize what's happening and what the Lost Highway is, it's more terrifying than the visual, right? So just for that fact alone, this movie, you got to go back and see this movie just for the stuff that you're catching in the movie. So end of rant, but Lost Highway is as good as anything David Lynch has ever done.
Now I want to rewatch both the scenes, the phone call and then
Oh, the end scene is
ending. I've never. I know. I've seen the visual of like the yellow lines, but I've never seen like the full thing.
Right. And so he in the beginning, Bill Pullman and is laying in bed, or I forget how it goes exactly, but the doorbell goes off, the intercom goes off because they have an intercom. They live in L.A., of course, and a voice says to him, "Dick Laurent is dead." Right? When the movie ends, you see Bill Pullman pull up to his own house, walk up to his own intercom, press the button, and say into it, "Dick Laurent is dead," and then drive away. He gave himself the message. He was telling himself that he killed his wife and the guy that she was cheating on him with, who was Dick Laurent, right? And he's basically come to realize that he's the murderer, right? He was blocking it. He was denying it. He was like, whatever, right? So he was in full denial, and he keeps getting these messages. Someone keeps breaking into his house and videotaping him. It's him. He's the one. He's giving himself the message that you're the murderer. And that's how the movie comes full circle and ends. Ugh. Anyway, it's amazing. So terrifying film, but much better than its reception, and should be much higher ranked in his body of work. Well, and like it's one of his most horror things.
I feel like anything David Lynch always has a chance to come back, just because of being David Lynch.
Right, and that's what happened with Hitchcock. Someone found in an interview that someone had asked Hitchcock, "What's your favorite movie of yours?" And he said Shadow of a Doubt. And then it became rediscovered, which is how I saw it, because it started showing on like TMC everywhere, Turner Class, TCM every week after the interview came. Wow. So you're right. I mean, it might, but let's kickstart it with this podcast and get an early jump on it.
I'm down. That ending sounds great.
Yeah,
I want to check it out. All right, so that was your number one. Mm-hmm. All right, my number one. This is without question, and I think you know it. I'm gonna go with Wrong Turn.
Oh, I knew you were gonna do it, and I was hoping you would.
Man, listen, it was funny as you were talking about the ending of Lost Highway. I found this really cool article from 2003, the year the film was released, with Stan Winston. And what I loved about it is right here is Stan Winston's intended for the new horror film Wrong Turn. His intent for it is to scare the shit out of you. And then it's got the photo Stan Winston next to it, and you could just tell like that there was like a lot of fun, like, and I don't know if the actual set of the film was fun,
sure.
Maybe but you could tell the idea behind it, the passion idea was like had to have been like a pure joy for him, because this was also I think the first one of the first films he came on as producer,
right?
And what's funny is reading that article is like he wanted to scare the shit out of you. Like I think he did. Like it was probably one of the scariest films I had seen at that time. And I can actually, it's funny. You remember. It's weird that you were like we both for these number one choices. We both remember where we were. I remember where I was when I watched Wrong Turn. My dad had surgery on his nose because he had these like polyps or whatever.
Polyps, right?
Yeah, polyps.
Yep.
That stops him from smells. So
sure.
He had him removed. So he came back, and it was around the same time Michael Jackson was getting his nose surgery. So he came back with a thing on his nose. We started calling him Michael Jackson.
Sure.
And so he was out of commission for like a week, and so like we like kind of hung out with him and like got him like snacks and shit like that.
Yeah.
And put on movies. My brother kept playing this one this one Hot Wheels racing movie, and then I put in Wrong Turn, and we did.
Of course you did.
And because it was still Blockbuster at the time.
Yeah.
And me and my brother watched it, and we were so frightened.
Yes.
By the end of it, and. What's him saying like the point of the film was to scare the shit out of you. It scared us watching it with our dad with the lights on, and I still think it's probably one of the best creature designs out of all the horror films
across all of the creatures in it. Absolutely.
And there's something about like the Appalachia Mountains that have always really freaked me out. Like,
oh yeah, the whole Deliverance vibe is terrifying.
Well, I think anything that like it's just the visuals of it, like all these trees and cabins and shit lit by lanterns. Like it's like there was like a ride at like Kings Island back in Ohio that like I think like there was like a train and then like you went past some like cabins and stuff like that, and I always imagined that being Appalachia. And then Wrong Turn went and was like, hey, let's make a horror movie there. I was like, shit.
And there's a interesting concept about old time horror from the Universal Dracula Frankenstein era, which is you may not notice it because you're just kind of in the horror field when you're watching it, but all horror in 1920s, 30s American horror, all of it was set in Europe. Like, it wasn't American. You were in a castle in Transylvania
Right.
or England, or you were in Europe because that's where the strange shit happened. America was fine. We didn't have all that occult devil infiltration. Like, it was all their problem, right? So you moved on. But if you flipped it, if the Europeans in the 20s and 30s were making American horror, it would look like Wrong Turn. That's where they would put it. That's how they would set it. It would be spooky trees and lanterns and like really empty, vast spaces. And yeah, I'm totally with you.
And I think out of like all of my picks, at least, and even some that I mentioned before, I think pound for pound, like it's probably one of the best paced films out of everything in there. Like I don't ever,
and one of the most rewatchable.
Exactly. I don't ever feel bored watching Wrong Turn. And like honestly, you could just divide it up into like a chunk. Like, oh my god, like even that scene with the car broken down just flashed in my head. I haven't thought about that in fucking years. Like,
but you can see it.
But I could still like and I can't even like describe it to you. But like I saw the image of it and it's crazy.
I half considered Joyride because I really like that movie. But I feel like there was this era of movies that came, and for some reason everyone knew they were good enough to deserve like 10 sequels, but then everyone didn't care about the one that started it all. Right? And that happened to Wrong Turn. Wrong Turn has what, like 9, 12 sequels? Like,
I think they even announced something last year about like new Wrong Turn. But so
it's got to be the least appreciated movie to have double-digit sequels in a horror movie. Like Amityville has 20 sequels, but everyone loves the first Amityville.
Yeah,
right?
or the remake.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. And Wrong Turn generated like even niche stuff like Wishmaster or Puppet Master or whatever. Like there's a core audience that really swears by it or whatever. But I don't hear
I've seen more Puppet Master than I have Wrong Turn.
Exactly. I don't see anyone fighting for Wrong Turn except for us.
No. And I think the setting of it is really good. I even like the first run-in with the inbred like rednecks. Where they're in the cabin and like some of the people are like up on the hilltop, and just the tension that it sets of like you watching the people go into the building and knowing that your friends are inside. The creatures themselves, like how savage they are.
Yeah.
The scene when they're up in the trees. Like
it's so weird that you were just saying that because I was just watching a nature documentary with Jenny. There's episodes to it. It's called Hostile Planet, right? Mm-hmm. And it keeps flashing back to like this is where humans came from, and then it shows a bunch of like monkeys or whatever in trees, just like fighting for their lives and like whatever. And then that scene in Wrong Turn made me feel like that's hitting like a really old spot in us. When they show us that shit, we're like, whoa, I remember that from like 100,000 years ago. Like, right?
This takes me back.
But I mean, there's a reason it works.
Well, what I also really like about it is how simple the premise was, them just taking a wrong turn.
But how great the details were. That cabin where they keep the jars and that cabin.
That was disgusting.
Like if someone made that cabin as like a haunted maze, like with like how Universal does the theme,
right?
Like the Shining or Exorcist. I'm sure I wouldn't even go in it because I just feel like I need a shower thinking about it.
What's really great about it is I don't think up until that point you get. I forget. I gotta go back and watch it. But I know you don't get like the full picture of who this ragtag bunch of hillbillies are. Through. But just looking at like the jars of teeth that they have, you're like, I don't want to know.
And there's a car graveyard, right? There's that kind of scene.
Yeah, and then it does have that cheesy ending when the cop shows up and the guy's still there. But but you know what's funny is even. I
mean, let's be honest. As horror fans, Nightmare on Elm Street is great, but that's a cheesy ending. Like some endings they're cheesy and still work.
Yeah. I just think the monsters, the trio of rednecks. Like I think when it comes to creature design, I do think I hate saying things are underrated because like everything's underrated to someone.
Sure.
But like those fuckers are. Yeah. They are just. I think
They're not. I mean, there's never been a Wrong Turn Halloween costume, right? No one's ever come to my door,
right,
dressed as Wrong Turn. I've had pumpkin heads come to my door. I've had like obscure horror like things. We live in LA, like you see all kinds of weird shit here, but no one dresses as Wrong Turn.
You know what I'm gonna do?
Nick's getting.
No. I'm gonna set the attention here. I'm gonna tell Universal because what you said there, I think, was how we get Wrong Turn back in its rightful glory of everyone talking about how great of a movie it is.
I'm down.
Plus, Stan Winston did all the dinosaurs for Jurassic Park. That's another Universal property. So
Totally.
if anything, we gotta understand Winston.
Agreed.
By having next year's Halloween Horror Nights have a wrong turn base. There we go. I'm setting the campaign right now. Let's get that hat. Let's get that. Can we get that trending on Twitter with our 200 followers on Twitter? Can we make that happen?
We could try.
It's honestly probably I would actually rank it wrong turn Fido and then the Ruins in terms of rewatchability, but I think
oh yeah,
wrong turn
in terms of rewatchability. Wrong.
You could put that into any horror movie marathon, Halloween October lineup.
Totally.
Like it's just this one gem of a film that will fit any sort of horror movie night.
There's no single time that movie has popped up on IFC or Sci-Fi or wherever I'm seeing on the TV that I don't watch it.
Right.
If it comes on, I just watch it.
Exactly. So that's my number one.
I love it.
Wrong turn.
It's on. That's a really solid slate of. Mine are a little more art house, like whatever. But I think, even if you just went into it from the standpoint of horror fans, like because you'll have your picks that'll have similar ideas to ours, but it'll be your versions of it.
Right.
Like you'll remember where you were when you saw Joyride, or you'll like whatever your picks are, right? But your reasons and our reasons will be shared because I mean those are pretty damn good reasons for these movies to be rediscovered or reappreciated.
Yeah. Oh, you know what? I will say this for the people listening. I was looking at our stats, and we got quite a bit of you guys listening.
Yes.
But we don't got that many reviews.
That's very true.
You know what I'm saying? So why don't you make the right turn and not go through a night of hellish hillbilly kerfuffles?
Well, let's see if we can do this. Okay, so make a right turn.
Make a right.
And leave us a 5-star review because a 1-star review leaves me in ruins.
Yeah, and if you give us a 3-star review, I don't know what I'd do with myself, knowing that you could have given us a 5.
That pun just tore out my soul. I'm a lost soul now.
Yeah, so once you get off that Lost highway.
Lost was in 2 of my titles. I didn't even notice that.
Wow, I didn't notice that either.
But you definitely give us a review. We need the support. We would appreciate it.
Did we get your third movie in there?
We did.
We got all of them in there?
We got all of them in there.
Okay. Don't be unfriendly. Give us a review. Give us a review. 5-star on iTunes. Right.
Don't come after us on the dark web. Just give us a review.
Wow, we got the sequel. Oh my God, we just came up with a new game. This is great. Once you go into your House of Wax and load up your personal computer go to iTunes with your CD-ROM, we're gonna go to the Jurassic Park tech now. Put in your AOL internet disc and give us a 5-star. What was the last one here? And I'll scream forever. I like that. All right, cool. Well, until next time, watch a bunch of horror movies. Stay scary. Give us reviews. Talk to you later. Live a long time. Bye.
Bye.